Hello, I'm glad you're here. This is Jennifer. So every year I give a lot of gift cards during the holiday season, and I like to make cards that present the gift card in a fun way, just to make it a little more special. So today I'm showing you how I made 25 cards today, all that contain a gift card that slides up to display when the person opens it. Now I'll talk a little bit about why I'm making so many of these cards, but I wanted to show you this technique because it's something that you can do with the supplies that you have and add into any card. I will first show you how I did all of this stamping, and then we'll assemble the cards and do the gift card feature. As with any interactive card, I think it's best to see the completed card in action first. When you open it, the inside slides up to reveal the gift card. Okay, for the stamping on this card, I'm using the Kitchen Sink Stamps Teardrop Ornaments. Now this set and the other two have been in my to-use pile for over a year now. I wanted to use it last year, didn't get a chance. Finally using it now, and boy was it fun to use. Kitchen Sink Stamps is known for their realistic layering sets, and they are amazing. If you've never looked at their other products, I encourage you to do so. I'll link to a video on the top right where I've used their products in the past. The stamping you get looks so realistic. Now this is the other set I'm using. These Christmas lights, this is what I really wanted to use. They look so real when you stamp them, and they're very easy to line up. So I'll be using both of these sets. Now there's another I thought I was going to use but decided not to, but it's one that would work well with the other two, and this is the Ornaments and Stars set. It's a small set, so the price point is great, and you have ornaments and stars that look very realistic when you stamp layer them. Along with this, I'll be using one of my favorite die sets of the year, and this is the Spellbinders Fluted Rectangle Die Set. So there are solid rectangle dies, and then dies that create a fun little finished pattern for a frame. So you can use these to create frames or rectangles with the pattern on the inside or outside. Many ways you can use them. And I'm going to show you a creative way also in this video. And they do have circles, squares, and I believe ovals available in the same design. But I'm sticking with the rectangles today. Now the first thing I did was I stamped some of the rectangles that I cut with that last die set very quickly with the solid most images from the two stamp sets I showed you earlier. One has the pine and one has the Christmas lights. This is just me kind of planning out how I want my cards to be stamped. I like to do this. You'll notice my stamping is not great. It's all about just doing a quick guide to follow as I stamp. I did 3 different versions, and I chose to do the one on the left with the small rectangle. So these rectangles will be stamped and on the front of our card. So off screen, I die cut about 25 of the white rectangles using that die set. I need about 20, but I always like to have a few more in case I mess up. I'm using my MISTI stamping tool because stamping tools are very helpful when doing a lot of stamping or doing stamp layering. I have my guide here where I want to try to position where that pine stamp should go on all of my cards. Since this pine stamp hangs off the left and the right, I need to get creative with this little creative corner that fits into the MISTI. This will allow the stamp to hang off on both the left and the right, as you'll see here. So I'll put the corner of the creative corner into my MISTI, then the corner of the white cardstock into that, and then line up my stamp with my guide, and then grab it with the door. So I'm going to keep that creative corner in the corner of my MISTI, and so I'm using some tape just to make sure it doesn't shift as I stamp. Okay, so now we can do our stamping. I put my first white rectangle into the corner, and I'm stamping this with my lightest green color. I'm using Altenew Crisp Dye Ink today. You can use absolutely any inks you want. The reason I chose Altenew is I have a lot of color choices, and their inks are available in light, medium, dark, and extra dark, which is great when you're doing layering like this. So I'm starting with the lightest color here. I believe this one's called Firefly, and I'm stamping this on all of my rectangles. You could make one card here if that's what you need, but I need a bunch of cards to include gift cards, and I'll explain why later. So I stamped that on all 25 pieces. I then go back to the first one where I stamped it in light green, and it should be pretty dry now. I like the layers to be dry so the ink stays crisp when you stamp on top for the next layer. If it's still wet, it might bleed a little bit, which is fine, but I like the crisp layered look. So this time I'm using a slightly darker green ink. This is the Shadow Creek, and I'm stamping that. Now my ink pad, it needs to be re-inked. So I am double stamping it just to make it a bit darker and a little more crisp. I need to order the re-inker for this one. So now I will stamp this onto each of the rectangles. So again, these are from Kitchen Sink Stamps, and the owner of Kitchen Sink Stamps is super nice. I discovered her stamps a while ago. I did a video. Again, I'll link to that. But what's really unique about her stamps is she has layering stamp sets for just about anything you could possibly want. I encourage you to see what else she has to offer. Just really talented, and the layering looks so realistic when you're done stamping. So now I've lined up the third layer. This has just little details for the pine, and I'm stamping this with my darkest green ink. It's called Mountain Pine. And look how beautiful that is. It looks so realistic, at least as realistic as I can get with the art that I create. So now I'll stamp this onto each of those rectangles. At this point, I've already messed up one, got a fingerprint, so I'm down to about 24. That's why I like to start out with more than I need when I craft this way, when I make a lot at once. Okay, next I'm moving to the little base of the lights, and I'm lining that up. And I'll stamp this onto each of them. This I'm stamping with a very light gray ink from Altenew. I believe this is called Evening Lake. I will link to all of the colors I use on this card below in case you want to try the same ones. I'll also have more information on my blog. But really, use the inks you have. If you don't have a light, medium, and dark of the same color, stamp it once for the first layer, twice for the second layer, and 3 times for the third layer. That'll give you a light, medium, and dark. Again, it's always best to let the layers dry in between. So now I'm moving on to the next base for the next light bulb, and I'll stamp the first layer of that. When I do stamp layering, I like to start with the solid most layer first. However, the kitchen sink stamps do come with some kind of instructions and guides on how to line theirs up easily. I find them easy enough to line up without looking at that, but if you want to get it just right, you might want to follow their instructions. Okay, so now I'm coming in with a medium gray here and stamping that layer on both of these bases. So I did that for 3 light bulb bases on each of those panels. I think I'm up down to 23 of these panels now. It's time for the fun part, and that is stamping the layered Christmas bulbs. Now I'm doing a red, yellow, and blue bulb, starting with the red in the center. And when I use red for layering, I start with a light peach first, and then just get darker in my reds as I layer up. So this is the first layer. Now there are there's 3 different size Christmas bulbs in that stamp set. I'm using the medium size bulbs on some of my panels and the bigger bulbs on other of my panels, and you'll see the difference in a moment. So I did the light yellow, light peach, and light blue. Now I'm coming in with the second layer and just going a little bit darker with each of those colors. So the middle will be red. The one on the right, I'll end up doing like a light orange. And then the blue, I'll do a little bit darker blue. Now here you can see the bigger bulbs. I stamped these just following each of the layers of the kitchen sink stamps stamp set. Now I'm on the last layer for this. Now this one I'm lining up and stamping with my darkest color. There are 4 layers in this large Christmas light bulb. You can always skip a layer, but I think taking the time to stamp each layer makes it look so much more realistic in the end. So I'm doing my darkest color here. This is like a darker orange. I'll do a dark red and a dark blue for the bulbs. I continued to stamp the bulbs until I had each of the rectangles completed. I'm down to 22 now. Now it's time to add a sentiment. I'm using Happy Holidays from the Waffle Flower Essential Celebration stamp set, a favorite of mine. And by the way, that reflection you see is a giant water bottle. I don't want you to think that I'm like drinking directly out of a wine bottle or something. I chug out of a giant water bottle all day long, and sometimes you see it in videos. Okay, so I'm stamping the Happy Holidays with black ink towards the bottom of each of the rectangles. Now this is where I went a little overboard. I decided I wanted more pine in that top left corner. Totally could skip this if you wanted to, but I repeated the 3 layers of the pine to fill in that corner. It just made me feel better with the final result. Now that our stamped rectangles are done, I need to create the white frame to go around it with that detail impression, then the green cardstock around that, and add it to a white note card. So I'm using that Spellbinders die set that I showed you before. I picked one of the fluted dies that's a bit bigger than our rectangle, and I'm going to cut that from a white rectangle that's slightly bigger. So this will just be a piece to go behind our stamped rectangles. I will also mat each of those with dark green cardstock. So there you can see my white rectangle with the little detail on the edge. Then I have a dark green cardstock that's slightly bigger, all cut with that die set. Now that dark green is only showing around the outside edge, right? Because it's the matte. Well, that's a lot of green cardstock to kind of waste to only be a matte. So this is a trick that I do often. I also needed some pine die cuts for other cards I'm doing. So I cut those from the center of each of these green rectangles. I then have these pine die cuts I can use for my other project, and I can glue the white rectangle on top of this, and no one will ever know that we cut away some of the area in the center. This is a great way to really stretch your supplies, especially that beautiful green or colorful cardstock that we all hoard so much. So I did that from each of those, and I had a bunch of pine die cuts ready to go for my next cards. I also wanted the center stamped rectangle to really stand up off the card. So I die cut 3 more of the same size rectangle and glued it to the back of our stamped one. Remember how I said I messed up a few of them? I even glued those to the back. No one will ever know. You can use scrap cardstock here or mess up cardstock or inexpensive cardstock, whatever you want. Now I'll glue that to the center of our decorative white die cut piece that has the green mat on the back. This will get glued to the front of a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card, and that's the completed front of the card. So I'm grabbing all of these pieces that I have ready, taking it upstairs. I'm going to sit in front of the TV and watch Elf with the Family and do all of this die cutting and assembly of these panels for the front of our card. Next, it's time to create the inside of the card, where we have that slider feature for the gift card. This is easy to do, and you don't need any specialty dies. Let's start by stamping the part that slides up there that says "Wishing You Joy" and has the gift card. You could leave this simple, but I wanted some stamping on the inside too. For this piece, you need to cut 5 by 4 inches from a heavyweight cardstock, and then score it 1 inch from the end. I find this size works the best. Again, it's 5 inches by 4 inches, scored 1 inch from the end. And by the way, I like to do each step of the mass producing at once, as you see me doing here. I find that it keeps me going and doesn't let me get bored with the process. Next, I can do that stamping up there towards the top of this panel. So the area you want to stamp in, if you want to include that, is just below the score line, but only about the top inch or 1.5 inches below the score line will show. So that's about the area you want to stamp in. So I have my cardstock piece in here. You can see the score line towards the top. I have the flap laying flat. Anything stamped above that score line won't show, but you could stamp there if you wanted to. So now I am lining up a sentiment about 1.25 inches below that score line. I won't do any stamping below that sentiment. That's where our gift card will be temporarily adhered. This stamp is from one of my favorite stamp sets from 2021 from the Ink Blot shop. It has lots of great, bold, basic sentiments, and it works great for this card. So now I'll stamp that on every one of those panels with the score line towards the top. I also decided to do the layered pine and one of the Christmas bulbs there. Again, this is stamping over the score line, but only thing that will show is what's below the score line. So you want to kind of keep it towards that top center area. Now this next step is something you don't need to do. And this will be one where I get comments in my YouTube video that say, oh, you have a lot of patience. But sometimes these details I feel add a lot to a card. And for me, I enjoy taking that time to make the card a little more special for the person, whether they notice it or not. But you see right there at the top of that pocket where the gift card's coming out, there is that pattern, that piercing pattern that looks like what we did on the front. So I wanted to add that to the top of all of the pockets that are in the inside of the card. This didn't take long, and I've leftover pieces for later. So I have a bunch of white cardstock that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I used the largest of the fluted rectangle dies from the Spellbinders set, and that creates that little piercing pattern around the inside edge of that piece. Now from those pieces, I'm cutting down to 5 1/4 by 3 1/2 inches. The side we're cutting off there, that little piece, we can use that as a border on another card. See that detail there? We can just cut it down and use it on a border on another card. I like that I have that leftover piece, but for this card, now my pockets will have that detail along the top. So I'm cutting all of those pieces down to 5 1/4 by 3 1/2 inches. If you don't care about that border detail, you can just use any piece of cardstock cut to 5 1/4 by 3 1/2. This is the piece that will turn into the pocket for our slider gift card feature. I do recommend using a lighter weight cardstock for this. Not super lightweight. We're not talking like printer paper or copy paper. We're talking like 80 pound. I usually use 110. 80 pound is great for this. If all you have is heavyweight, you can use that too. Now from each of those cardstock pieces, again, 5 1/4 by 3 1/2, I'm scoring a 1/2 inch from each end. This will help us to form our pockets. There are a million ways you can do this, but I find this to be the fastest. Now I will fold along those score lines and reinforce the folds with my bone folder. Now this next step you do not have to do. I just feel it helps to give a better result, but I like to cut a little diagonal piece off of each of these, cutting from where the score line is off to the edge. So just little triangles cut off the edge. Now I will put double-sided tape, a strong double-sided tape, along each of those flaps. I like using Lawn Fawn double-sided tape. I think that's a great option and it tears very easily. So now I can add this to the inside of our card. I put some double-sided tape right along the bottom inside edge of our card. This is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top folding note card. So I remove the release paper from the double-sided adhesive. I'll do the same from those two pieces on the flaps of our pocket. I'll fold the flaps in and now glue this pocket right along the bottom edge. So I'm centering it up on the inside and making sure it's right along that bottom edge and press it down. So now all 3 sides of this is sealed and there's a pocket at the top. Again, this is the inside of a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card. I'll press that down firmly and now we have a card with a little pocket on the inside. And on that top edge of the pocket, we have that detail that matches the front of our card. Okay, now we can add our sliding panel and our gift card. I just use a tape runner to add the gift card to that sliding panel piece. You can also use glue dots. So I put my gift card right below our sentiment. Then I'm putting a strong adhesive above the score line on the flap on the top of this. I'm using Gina K Connect liquid adhesive, but you could use the Lawn Fawn tape if you prefer. I put that into the pocket and I make the top edge of this sliding piece line up with the crease of the note card, and then I close it down, pressing firmly, giving it a few minutes to dry. I then can glue the front panel onto the card, and notice no one will ever see that I die cut out some pine from that to save the cardstock. So now we have this fun slider feature. So when we open it up, that panel slides up, so the gift card's very obvious. It slides up and they see it right away, and they can easily reach in and remove it since I used a simple bit of tape runner or glue dots. There's also plenty of room to write a personal sentiment on the white area or the pocket towards the bottom. Now this may shock you, but I didn't add any gemstones to this. I know that's crazy, but I did add a thin green cardstock strip right along the detail of the pocket just for a little definition there, and then cut the excess off. This is another great way of using up those little scraps that we tend to hoard. As I mentioned earlier, you can use glue dots to temporarily add your gift cards to that slider feature. For this particular card, I wanted 2 gift cards in the inside. One to our favorite local pizza place and one to our favorite local ice cream place. So I can actually put both of those on the sliding panel, and when they open it, you'll see both gift cards. So I finished off all the cards and added a gift card inside of each, and I have matching envelopes from Simon Says Stamp. Now, here's the thing. I know a lot of people are probably wondering why I made so many cards with gift cards on the inside. Many years ago, our family decided to not exchange gifts between adults. Like my husband and I don't exchange Christmas gifts. Instead, we do things outside of our family. And one of the things that I like to do is to give gift cards to folks in our community, such as teachers, the folks who deliver our mail. Working from home, I get a lot of deliveries. For the admin folks at the schools. I mean, you name it. We find a way to spoil them. And this is a nice thing to do during the holidays. So each of these will go to someone, probably hand delivered, and hopefully it'll make them smile. I don't know that they'll realize that I put this much time into it, but if they get just a little idea that I really care about what they do, then it's totally worth it to me. So here are the two different versions. This one has the smaller Christmas light bulbs. This one has the bigger. And I had a great time making them. For me, this is the joy of creating, and I just love doing it. So now we've got the kindness of sharing it, so I can get these delivered this week, last minute, of course. All right, so if you're interested in the things that I used here, they're linked below in my YouTube description, but break out any supplies you have and make a special card to hold the gift cards that you give to someone. I also have a couple other videos sharing gift card holder ideas, and I'll link to those here at the end. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, and I'll see you soon.